Well, the conference is basically about how to use technology to better transfer knowledge from one person to another. I mean, it's an old dream that we can maybe sort of, eat a pill and then we know another language, and that pill will never exist. But the question is, can technology be used to transport knowledge better than by just telling a story or something like this? And so this is the basic idea of this conference. And of course, technology means network technology and computer technology. And what we know today is that we will never replace classroom teaching, except in cases where classroom teaching doesn't make sense. So it doesn't make sense if students have to go 3 hours to a class, then it's better to do this remotely. Or it doesn't make sense if you have a question concerning a particular problem when you're working in a company to then take a course for that particular small subject you're interested in. Then it's better to go to the internet and take a learning module, as we call it, and work through that learning module, and that's it. Then you have learned what you needed to do. So this is the topic of the conference. Well, my talk was a little bit also on the warning side, that I said not everything we can do is necessarily positive, and we have to watch out a little bit. Like, for example, we are starting to get used to, I call it externalizing, putting information into computers or into the internet and not keeping it in our head anymore. Like, we don't know how to calculate these numbers anymore because we use a pocket calculator. We don't know, at least I don't know, how to spell correctly English because I have a spell checker. So I write something and the spell checker tells me when I make a mistake. And, when I drive the car and I use my GPS system, it guides me quite well. But at the same time, I never learn the lay of the city, So the thing that really surprised me, I was visiting a friend in a city in Germany 3 times. So I flew to Frankfurt, rented a car with GPS, and the GPS guided me to this place where he was working, a remote place. And then the 4th time, I only got a small car without GPS. And despite the fact that I had gone 3 times to this place and back, I didn't find the place. So it really means that you completely start to trust the voice that tells you, turn left at the next junction, etc. And you really don't learn anymore the general feeling, which you would otherwise if you travel by map and really search your way the first time. Basically, technology is can be used in a very positive fashion, there's no doubt, but we also have to watch out about some negative effects. For example, if I look at kids in Austria, and probably it's the same in Guatemala, they use SMS and Twitter and the short messaging system to an extent that they stop to learn how to write long sentences. They stop how to learn to read long sentences. So, we have some philosophers saying in the world, like, Wittgenstein or Kierkegaard, and I was still able to read this. If I give this today to my students, even at university level, they're not able to read it anymore. They do not understand, that the sentence can be half a page long in German. They're not used to it. So we have to watch out that we don't lose certain abilities, as we have lost certain abilities of our body. My father had very strong muscles because he was just chopping wood all the time. I have no muscles left in my arm because I'm not chopping wood, And so I think we have at the moment fairly good muscles in our brain for thinking. And the danger is that maybe some of these muscles in our brain will also degenerate, And that I think we have to watch out. Yeah. Yeah, well, there was a discussion this morning which was trying to touch on the subject. My personal feeling is that you should never force teachers to use computers, but you should actually make it a scarce commodity, and you should try to find a champion in every school, or 2 champions. Someone who really likes to do it. And when someone else comes, says, no, this is my computer, don't look over my shoulder. And then people start to be curious, and then they want to do it. If you force it upon them, you give everyone a computer and say, now you have to use it, I think it doesn't work. You really have to do it a little bit more sneaky by getting those people who want to do it, who are curious enough to do it, and they then pull the others along, So we have done some experiments on these lines in Malaysia, in very remote areas, where we have introduced both computers and medical facilities. It was really interesting if we managed in a village to find, I call it a champion, someone who said, oh, this is cute, I want to do it. Then the whole village, after 10 years, was computerized, and they loved it and they used it nicely. And in another village where we didn't find someone who was really enthused about it, well, we just left them alone. We have to go there again in 5 years' time. In my talk, I try to show that you cannot really predict the long-range future. But I think that should make us modest. So it should make us aware of the fact that we can never be sure what the future look like. But because we know this, we can be at the lookout for signs of changes, And, if we think that everything will continue as it is now, a little bit more computers, a little bit faster cars, a little bit better roads, then we're making a mistake. There will be dramatic changes. And if we just keep this in mind, then maybe if we observe something, we see this as a first indication of a dramatic change. So I think this is what we can learn from looking into the past, and this is how we can deal a little bit with the future, to sort of keep our ears and eyes open, and if we see changes, try to then think, do they look positive, do they look negative, and then act accordingly. I think that's the best we can do. We cannot really forecast the future.
Thank you. Is this the first time coming to Guatemala?
No, actually, it's only the second time. The first time I was visiting the northern part of Flores and Tikal, and
really?
Simply because my youngest daughter is a biologist, and she was taking crocodiles and other animals north of the border. And so she invited me to come, and it was lots of fun to help her with her biological work. And then I used the occasion to visit, of course, Tikal and Flores and so on.
Oh, that's great.
You certainly have a very beautiful country, there's no doubt. Well, I really think that Galileo has built up a surprising good reputation. You would basically, in a comparatively small country like Guatemala, where you're faced with many problems like, unemployment, etc., one wouldn't expect to have a university of that level. I think the level of the university is quite good. So I think, I wouldn't say it's worldwide known, but it's a name that, you hear sometimes, even in Europe and North America. So this is a fairly good private university. Well, it's one of a series of conferences, and of course the main aim of these conferences is always to get to know other people and try to find out what other people have already done that you can use. And in that sense, I expect that this conference will have the same results as other ones. The main difference is that here the local participation is, of course, larger, as if that conference would take place in Europe or somewhere. And this means that maybe the information exchange will be somewhat different, in the sense that maybe Europeans and maybe also North Americans will bring in some new ideas that haven't yet germinated here. On the other hand, we will be confronted also with new situations, And new situations always means, oh gosh, we haven't thought of that, we have to learn how to deal with that. So it's sort of, I think, something that goes in both directions.